Good evening and welcome to Speaker's Corner UK channel. I'm here with my, as always, co-host, Stop Spamming. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Very well, thank you.
And as the title suggests, we thought here's a short video. And the reason this sort of came up, it's a couple of years old, but the reason it came up was because Socrates' son did a critique on this. So if you're interested in some other critiques, then make sure you search for Socrates' son. He's done critiques on quite a few Muslim videos. And this popped up and I had a quick listen and I said to Stops, hey, we're normally used to doing 45-minute or longer reviews of videos that end up being 3 hours long from our critique point of view. So let's see if we can do a shorter one, see how long this lasts. And if you're a Muslim listening, then you're more than welcome to let us know in the comments, see if you guys want to jump on and either defend that position or challenge us or have a conversation, whatever it may be. Stops, over to you, sir. What's your thoughts? So you've obviously watched the video, so we'll go through it and see what thoughts we have.
I haven't really watched the whole thing.
Okay.
I just sort of jumped in and out, and what I have not done is because I didn't have time yet to watch what Socrates' son says about this, because he always has some like really interesting takes. So I didn't want to spoil it, so I didn't watch his view, but I would expect ours to be quite closely matched, so it's okay. So I'm looking forward to this one because it is a quick one, so it should be over in about 30 minutes. And I think it's a good idea to once in a while have shorter ones and not these monumental 15-hour-long thingamajigs.
Yes. So again, hopefully
just to
you guys
get people get it. It's like an appetizer. So if somebody's interested, this is what we both of us. I didn't even know that I like this, but it's fun to listen to people and not go off and research and do in-depth. What I normally do, this in-depth research that I do, and then put together the whole video. This takes sometimes weeks. Sometimes it's fun just to listen to something and just from the top of your head, just sort of comment on it. And that's what we're doing here at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's good. Let's go to full screen there. There we go. All right, you're controlling the stops, so I'll just say stop or whatever the case is as we go through. Maybe I'll stop a bit more often than you.
And if somebody in the chat wants me to stop and say something, comment something, or ask something, just type one enter, just to catch my attention, and then I will stop the video and you can ask.
Okay, so just a quick one for people who, just to set the scene for people who are just joining us. This is in Speaker's Corner. On the right is Imran. He's one of the IERA Muslim apologists. On the right, I'm guessing he's an atheist. Never seen him, so I don't know who he is. And as I say, this is a short conversation and we'll break down some of our thoughts on this. So with that, again, if you're a Muslim and you are joining us and you want to join the panel, you want to comment or critique, then let us know. Otherwise, just drop us a message in the chat. We'll attempt to respond to that as well.
Do you believe there is a creator?
I believe there could be, but I don't see any empirical evidence and nothing to prove me otherwise.
Why do you assume there has to be empirical evidence for everything?
Because otherwise it's irrational.
Do you have parents?
Hold on.
Do you have parents?
Okay, stop there. Okay.
Stop automatic.
Yeah, it's straight into this, isn't it? All right, let's deal with it now. Give me your thoughts on this parents thing first. Now, okay, so before we do that, the reason that he brings up the parents is because the atheist guy said, hey, there's no empirical evidence. He said there could be a God, but there's no empirical evidence, so he doesn't believe. But he also said, which I don't necessarily agree with, if there isn't empirical evidence, it's irrational. I wouldn't go that far. I just say that there's no good reasons to believe. For something to be irrational, there would need to be a contradiction. And you don't. So if somebody said, hey, I think God exists and does not exist, then I don't need empirical evidence, right? That would be irrational off the bat. That would be illogical and therefore irrational. But if somebody makes a claim that doesn't have a straightforward contradiction, then it's not immediately irrational. You would have to ask them further questions, etc., to ascertain that. But empirical evidence, I think, is one of the strongest things that one can do. I don't think it's the ultimate or the only thing. I won't say ultimate, but it's certainly one of the strongest, if not the strongest. I'm open to somebody suggesting there's another methodology we can bring to bear. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it is a reliable way, and I think one of the best. And so that sort of evidence, and it's especially useful if in fact there's claims that the God has interfered in this world, if there is, and this is a key point, if the God has interfered in this world, is he's done something in this universe, if he's supernatural, but he stuck his supernatural finger metaphorically into this universe, then there would be empirical evidence left by, especially if those claims involve not just him somehow magically doing something that is impossible, but if there's something where he's done something in this world, then in principle we can, ask for empirical evidence. Do you want to talk on the family thing, or this mother and brother thing, please, Stops?
Well, I want to comment on what he said, because number one, asking for or looking for or demanding empirical evidence is absolutely correct. It has absolutely nothing to do with science. This is just a way of ascertaining facts, ascertaining reality. There are other ways of doing that, and it is definitely not the only way, but I certainly understand why somebody would do that, why somebody would say, look, if it's not founded on empirical evidence, then it's irrational. This in layman's terms would indicate that all he wants is evidence. So this is just a bit of a clumsy way of saying it. Now, the family thing, I mean, this is totally ridiculous, because it's a straw man, it's a red herring, there's so many things wrong with that, because if I look at my parents, there is a similarity in looks, and there are so many indications. And it's not only somebody telling me these things, it's not only a matter of like testimony or something. And the most important thing is, if I wanted to, I could verify this using a scientific method, using science the way that it is available to us now, so that I could verify this if I wanted this to a very high probability. So this is the thing. I mean, this whole thing with the parents is absolutely stupid, because if I don't have parents, I'm not here. So what is the point of asking, do you have parents? The point that Imran is trying to make is, as Rob pointed out, is just simply to say, well, you don't know that you have parents, you're not 100% sure, you simply believe this, so why shouldn't I believe there is a God? Well, those two things have absolutely nothing to do with one another, because on the one, I don't need to repeat this,
Yeah, it's a false equivalency, but we'll let it run on a bit more, and we'll comment more on it, because obviously with the parents, they are something empirical in this world, and it's true to say that your parents might not be your parents. Maybe you were adopted or whatever the case is, but you could point to things that you would suggest is evidence, like photos of you as a young person with these people growing up over a period of time, being in the house with them for many years, remembering such scenarios and situations. Now he could turn around and say, well, hey, maybe they were adopted. That's true. But the chances of them, again, what we're talking about is being, as Slop said, the probability of it. If you've got all these photos, etc., then they would be your parents. What he really means, and he hasn't actually said it, is, are your parents your biological parents? Because adopted parents are parents. So they would, in fact, be parents. So exactly. He'd have to modify his statement and be more accurate under pressure. Now, he hasn't been put under pressure here, and you'll notice he's a bit cocky in this one. So that's another reason that we're going to sort of expose this fallacious thinking. But with whatever the case is, we've got these parents, right? And they're in this world. Now compare that with God. What is it that God's done in this world that we can compare the parents with? Even if they were the wrong parents, we have parents. We're not at the stage where, and I don't know whether we ever would, we'd somehow have parents, whether they were actually copulated or whether it came from, sperm that was donated or whatever. There will always be parents. There's some empirical data about this. Nobody's born apart from, and even Jesus had supposedly parents of some sort. So that we know for a fact, whichever they are, they're in this world, and that's an empirical thing. Now contrast that with God, which is supposedly supernatural, and you can see that there's a false equivalency. But it's such a basic thing, and this whole parents thing just tells me that it's sloppy. It's really basic thinking, and I think we're going to expose more of it as we go on. So let's go from there. Stops.
Rob, you're clicking.
My apologies.
Yeah, and I just turned around and told you the sky was green. Would you believe me?
Okay, listen.
And that's a very good point that he's making. If you're blinded, I tell you that something is green, how would you know? How can you verify it? How can you do that? Do you believe this based on trust or not? And this is exactly the point that Imran should think about, and not go to the thing is, Imran wants an absolute kind of thing. His line of thinking is extremely limited, because he only works in black and white, and only the straight line, nothing left or right, nothing in the grays or anything. He doesn't even understand the significance of this question. This is the problem.
Do you have parents?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe your parents are your parents?
To the best of my degree, yes.
Okay. Have you ever
Without a DNA test, I can't be sure.
So till this day, how old are you?
And he admits it. He immediately points it out. So, but Imran doesn't understand it. This is the problem. He wants this 100% certainty, and somebody telling him, well, I can't be 100% sure, is not acceptable, and that's it.
30.
You're 30 years old and you don't know if your parents are your parents till this day.
No.
Have you done a DNA test?
I've assumed.
Just stop there again.
Have you done a DNA?
Okay, so do you hear now? He says you're 30 years old and you don't know. Again, if I had to take Imran, we'd have to go through this like you were speaking to children at a high school, or whatever the case is. And you've got to split up belief and knowledge, and don't equivocate on. So he believes it. He could also say, I know it. And then the question is, what does he mean by knowledge? Justified true belief is normally the sort of basic knowledge claim. And you say, okay, what is it that justifies you making the claim that you believe your parents to be your parents? Because remember, to say you know is justified true belief. So you need to be justified, you need to believe it in virtue of it being true. And so those are the three criteria, and that's a stronger claim, but he could warrant that by providing evidence. I've lived with them, I've got all these photos, they've called me my son, I call them parents, whatever the case is. Now, he could still be wrong, but that's, as was pointed out, that's an entire red herring. People don't go around with absolute certainty. We, as far as I can tell, we're all fallible, right? We can make mistakes. So what we're going is with a high probability. And knowledge isn't an absolute claim. And the moment somebody says that, they really haven't looked into any philosophical points at this at all. What we're saying is there's a justified true belief, and justification does not require an absolute or certain level in order to be justified. It requires some justification that is more than what one would potentially have for a belief.
That's it?
Yeah, we'll leave it there for now.
DNA test. Have you done a DNA test?
Okay, now you're strong.
No, hold on. I'm asking you. I'm not strong, man. I'm asking you.
I haven't done a DNA test.
But you don't find it necessary to do a DNA test right now because right now you don't believe in your own parents?
But no, because they're taking care of it.
No, bro. You're not being...
Okay, yeah.
Just now he asked, do you know it? And now he says you don't even believe it. So he's flip-flopping. He's jumping around between belief and knowledge. He has no clue what he's talking about. All he knows is he's using emotion, and this is the problem. He's not really making.
Yeah, he's straw-manning the guy now, because he's saying, well, hey, if you haven't had a DNA test, you don't know that your parents are your parents. Come on, bro. There's a bit of steamrolling going on here as well. But I think this guy sort of handles it. He remains calm and so forth. But that's obviously not the case. He did say that he believes it's his parents. He might even say that he knows it, and then he'd give some justifications for it. But at no point is he going to make an absolute claim. And that's, like I say, red herring, because that wouldn't help him. He'd turn it around and say, what do you know absolutely? Right, and then Imran would be stuck if he was intellectually honest. So complete red herring. If somebody says, do you know something, that should immediately give you a red flag. Right, and you just ask them, what do you mean by no? Right, then they have to unpack what they mean by no, and you could, if they're claiming absolutes, you can correct them. If they know what they're talking about, then say justified true belief, then of course all you need is a high probability and not absolute certainty.
This is called being disingenuous. Of course you believe your parents are your parents. Bro, you know what? You're going around in circles.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop there.
Logic is...
I mean, that's just complete and utter bollocks, right? I don't know if he's lost the plot here. He said he believed his parents are his parents. He said he hadn't done a DNA test, but he believes it. So what's with the straw manning here? And what's with the, you're going round and round? He's not going round and round. You keep asking the same thing, and then you're not taking his position. I mean, what the hell's going on here?
And Abdul Hamid, what is your obsession with Islam? Well, just look what Islam is doing to a brain. Just look at the brain of Imran, how limited it is, how totally void of any kind of reasoning, how totally, it's crazy. And this is what Islam is doing. So what we're doing is we're showing people, listen, there is something fundamentally wrong here. We need to, this is self-defense. We need to protect ourselves from this. We can't allow this. We need to show non-Muslims how bad it is to get this Islam virus. And on the other hand, we need to show the Muslims how bad their reasoning is, how bad their approach is. Because this Imran guy thinks he's making a lot of sense. He thinks he's God's gift to mankind. He thinks that he's really making sense, and he's saying something really useful. He's not. And this is why we're doing this. So it's not an obsession with Islam. So go debate Imran. Well, you see, this is childish. These people have been running away from me for 10 years. I've talked to Imran. Imran said, "Yeah, let's have a chat. Let's sit together and talk." That was in 2013, I think. And since then, he's been running away from me. Like the same Jordan M. He challenged us. He came to us and said, "I challenge you to a debate," and when we accepted, he's been running away ever since. I've had so many people challenging me to a debate and said, "Why don't you debate? Why don't you?" And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And then they look at my channel and suddenly they say, "Well, I'm not interested." Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
And also yeah, go on.
Nobody runs from you. Who are you? Well, all these people are running. Ask them. Ask them why they're running away. I do not know.
No, but they won't come and debate here.
It doesn't matter where. There's a guy, this Sheikh Farouk, this Sheikh Fahim. All these sheikhs, they challenged me, and then I said, "Okay, yes, I accept. Let's do it next Saturday on Speaker's Corner, or there's an independent debating channel. We can set it up there. No problem." And suddenly they say, "Oh, well, maybe next time, maybe next year. I'm busy right now, maybe whenever." They're all shit scared. Ask them why they are so shit scared. Ask them why they are such cowards. Or go and talk to Imran. He has epistemics, something. He has a channel. And ask him why he's running away. And that's it.
And Abdul, if you want to come on here, you're welcome. We'll give you the link and you can come and respond. Right, so Imran and these guys won't come on the channel here. Hamza's openly said it. We've got that recorded on the EF Dawa when I was on there. So Stops and I end up going there. But all we're doing is exposing bad thinking here. Obviously, Islam itself from the Quran we think is profoundly confused and mistaken and is harmful. And certain Muslims, like this particular fellow here, are confused and badly mistaken, and that's what we are exposing. So, I mean, you can make your subjective, unsubstantiated claims about you hate Islam or whatever. That's just vacuous claims. And so you can assert that without evidence. I'm just going to dismiss it as in you making noise without saying anything substantial. Let's move on.
Where can we see debates of you? Well, go to my Stop Spamming My Home channel. I have debates there. What's your problem? There's no mistake. I'm an open book. I'm very honest. I'm very, I don't understand it. People like Hamza, we have it. I mean, he told us on record, on the video, in public, that we are Islamophobes and haters. And this is why he's going to block everybody from the Gin and Tonic Show, because we are Islamophobes, and he's been told this. He doesn't know us. He doesn't know us from He's been told this and he believes, and this is why he obeys. And that's it. So. All right, let's continue.
No, I'm just trying to highlight to you now that's empirical.
One thing I want to add, which I've forgotten, I'm sorry. Abdul Hamid, why do you say I should go and debate Imran or anybody else? Why don't you come here and debate me? Why are you hiding behind others? Why are you such a coward? Why can't you come and have a chat with me and see whether I'm lying, whether I'm hating, whether I'm an Islamophobe? Why is it that you are hiding behind others and tell me to go and debate others? You should come here. You, if you are a Muslim, you have all the arguments. You've got your God, you've got Muhammad, you've got angels, you've got jinn, you have got everybody supporting you. I'm just one tiny little atheist, and you are shit scared of me.
Empirical data is not the only way to truth. What I'm trying to tell you is that you believe your parents are your parents, not based on empirical data. It's not based on empirical data.
Yes, it is.
What's it based?
ultimately it is, if you reduce it down, because what he's going to argue for now is eyewitness testimony. Well, what is eyewitness testimony actually? It's photons reaching your eyes. It's you making a comprehension using your brain, which is all part of the physical world. So in actual fact, if you reduce it all the way down, it is physical or empirical evidence, right? So when somebody opens their mouth, obviously sound comes out as well, but they're making statements about the world that they've observed or heard or used their senses, and that's all coming in empirically. The only thing that wouldn't be empirical is like a deductive argument. So some sort of transcendent argument, you might be avoiding empirical evidence, but then you'd still be basing it on what we understand about the world, the physical or the material world. So it's not necessarily entirely true if you reduce it all the way down anyway.
Based on, tell me.
It's based on my idea that I believe them to be.
No, where did the idea come from? How did you develop the idea that your parents are your parents?
See, now you're deconstructing.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you, how did you develop the idea?
I presuppose, I just assumed.
That is a bit. No,
he didn't actually just presuppose, right? He's formed a belief and he's been convinced for certain reasons. And if he had time, we'd ask him, okay, so why are you convinced? So you didn't just roll out of bed one day and go, oh, I've got these people I'll go call my parents, right? They've been around for a long time with him. They've cared for him. They've called him son. He's called them mother and father. They've accepted that. There'll be various things that he's not immediately aware of to articulate straight out of the bat, but he's been convinced, and very likely for good reasons. As we say, it could be that they're his step parents, or it could be that he's, been, kidnapped or something. But the chances of that happening is incredibly small. So he's got a high reliability, and that's all he requires. And he could articulate if he had the time why he's convinced. It wasn't that he just presupposed it. So he's probably just spoken a little bit quicker there because, you're being pressed by somebody in the middle of speaker's corner. So I think there's more that could easily be said here.
It's based on the testimony of your parents. It's based on testimony. Yeah, it's not based on empirical data. Of course, you can get a DNA test, no doubt. I agree, but you haven't got it yet. Right now, you believe your parents are your parents. Hopefully, you do, based on testimony.
Yes, because I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Proving my point exactly, which is that you don't need empirical data to believe in things, always. Empiricism is one route to knowledge, I agree. It's not the only route to knowledge, you've just proven that.
I've also told you that.
Do you understand what you've done?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, good.
I also accept you. I presuppose that they're parents. Now that's a logically inconsistent point.
No, what do you mean presuppose, bro? Look, define.
Do you know what presupposition is?
Yeah, I know, but you're not presupposing. You're not just saying, "Oh, I believe these are my parents," because I could just say, "I believe my neighbors are my parents." You don't do that. No, you don't do that, bro. You believe your.
Yes, you do. Everybody does that because they're your parents. Even when you're adopted, a lot of children do not even know that they are not your physical parents. They will still presuppose that they are the parents. My goodness, why is that so difficult to accept? It's only difficult once you're not getting your point across that, yes, I have to admit that this is empirical. It's not empirical, but it is testimony, and therefore I'm in the same position as you because I'm accepting testimony the same way as you do, and therefore I am justified in believing what I believe. That's all that this is boiling down to.
Let's also remember why they're going down this fallacious route, because what he's going to argue very shortly is, hey, you believing it without empirical evidence, which I don't think is true, but let's suppose it was the case. He's going to say, but hey, look, I'm going to do the same with God. But it's an equivocation fallacy, among other things, to suggest that, because the evidence for God isn't empirical, and you don't even have eyewitness testimony of it. You've got claims of eyewitness, and number three, it's an extraordinary or, quote, supernatural claim. So that scales massively. It's not a mundane claim. Everybody has parents. We know of no human that's ever been born, or probably ever will, although that's probably possibly a little bit speculative. Maybe, 1,000 years they can somehow bring a human being into existence that doesn't have parents. I'm not quite sure how you would do that. Maybe you could replicate, at that stage, biology such that you wouldn't require parents. But so far, no human being has ever come into existence without some parent. Even Jesus had at least one parent, if you're going to believe even that story. And so there's good reason for that claim. Now do the same with God. And of course you can't. So this is a massive equivocation fallacy, and all they want to do is to attempt fallaciously to show that you can believe things without empirical evidence. But it's much weaker, and it's exceptionally weak. And I would never accept eyewitness testimony for an extraordinary event. And I would ask him the same thing, right? Do you accept eyewitness testimony? Okay, great. Why don't you accept that the eyewitness testimony of over 500 people that claim to have witnessed, eyewitnessed, we're not talking about people afterwards, eyewitnessed the resurrection of Jesus. And let's see what excuses he's going to give for that. Now he's going to give special pleading. No, but those are unreliable. Oh, really? How do you establish which eyewitnesses are unreliable? And now you're going to shoot yourself in both feet, and you're on your knees.
And this is what we need to learn. We need to learn to turn it around. I make the same mistake, that I think I need to be polite, I need to be accommodating, and I appease them, and then I don't grab the opportunities to turn things around. And this is a big mistake, I know.
Appearance of your parents based on testimony. You have good reasons to believe that. I'm not denying that. But what I'm showing you is your reasons for believing your parents are your parents aren't empirical reasons. You can do DNA tests, but you don't believe in your parents right now based on a DNA test.
So then you're showing that it's irrational and there's nothing actually...
No, what I'm showing, if you listen to me, what I'm telling you, I'm highlighting, is there are many routes to knowledge. Empiricism is one of them. It's not the only way to truth. Therefore, hear me out, therefore, when you try asking for empirical data for God's existence, you're holding a flawed position. You don't need empirical data. First and foremost, God is beyond the physical.
Yeah, okay,
you don't need empirical data.
Let's deal with that again. Yes, okay, let's go with the definition of God's beyond the empirical. That would be fine if it was a deist God. Then we're going, cool. Then we can't do anything with a deist God. Then science can't be brought to bear in principle against a deist God. Although we could, at least show some probability about a universe. If a universe was past eternal and the claim was that a deist God brought it into existence, that would be problematic for a deist God. But apart from that, if you're talking about a theist God, like we've said many times, this theist God has interfered in this world. And in principle, you can bring empiricism to bear on this. If in fact the moon was split, which is an empirical claim, and somehow came back together, there should be some sort of evidence. And if there is no evidence, and the moon looks like it has never been split, then we are right to be incredibly skeptical and in fact to dismiss the claim until proven otherwise. And I could make a justification to say that would require a miracle claim. And I'm never going to accept eyewitness testimony for a miracle claim. And if you do, then you've got to be consistent and accept it for other miracle claims. Otherwise, it's special pleading. And all you're going to attempt to do is try and bring some reasons why you don't accept that eyewitness testimony for an extraordinary event, but you accept this one, and nobody even saw this apparently anyway. So the splitting of the moon as an example, nobody's witnessed. But yet they witnessed 500 people plus supposedly witnessed Jesus' resurrection. Okay, be consistent here.
Do you believe China exists?
Yes, obviously.
Have you been to China?
I have.
Oh my God. The thing, you see, this guy really doesn't have the brain capacity to understand what he's doing. If you say China, you have just defined something into existence. Because you're saying China. China is defined as an area that we have, generated by drawing lines on a map. So this is something that must exist because you have just defined it as something that does exist. So you cannot ask these type of questions. You're making a total fool of yourself by asking something that you have just shown that it exists. You've demonstrated that it exists. And now you're saying, do you believe that it exists?
But the other thing is, I don't know.
Empirically.
I don't know why he's bringing up another version of this, right? I think the point has been attempted to be made, and I think it's certainly from my point of view, it's failed. So to bring up China or to try and bring up another example is like tiresome and repetitive. What's the point? Is the other guy suddenly going to accept that you can believe things without empirical evidence? Well, of course he already accepts that, but he wants empirical evidence because it's one of the strongest, if not the strongest way to verify something to a high probability, and that's what he's asking for, and that's what you should provide. You make an extraordinary claim, and we're not going to accept it on mundane or eyewitness testimony. That is, we know humans are incredibly unreliable with eyewitness. You can have multiple people witness the same event, and they'll give you conflicting views, and that should tell us a lot about eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, well, the point he's trying to make is you haven't been there, and if you haven't been there, you see, he's focused on this physical. You need to see it with your eyes, then yes. If you hear it with your ears, then yes. If you've physically been there, then yes. So he believes Mecca exists because he's been there. If I ask him, have you been to Durban or something, he will say, no, Durban doesn't exist because I haven't been there. You know, that's stupid. That's not, yeah.
You have, okay. Do you believe Africa exists?
Just, yeah.
Have you been to Africa?
Been to South Africa, yeah.
Okay, but have you been to the heart of Africa?
No.
No, but you believe it exists. Why do you believe it exists?
Because there's data, there's satellite
What's the
imagery.
data? Give me specific.
Satellite imagery.
So how do you know the satellite image is actually the heart of Africa? How do you know someone has not just told you that?
See, now you're not being consistent because now
No.
you're saying it.
What I'm highlighting to you is that although you've seen a picture of the heart of Africa, someone is telling you that this is Central Africa. It's again testimony. It's not empirical data, bro.
It is good.
He doesn't understand this. He doesn't understand that if you look at star constellations, for example, you can pinpoint your position pretty accurately. We have GPS, which allows us to do the same thing. So yes, I can verify whether this location is in fact Central Africa by looking at the geology, by looking at the position that the satellite was in when it was taking the shot. So there are various ways of determining whether or not this is Central Africa. He's just too limited to understand this. He's sitting with his Islam virus in his head, thinking only about, God and Muhammad, and that's it. And if it doesn't fit into the Quran, it doesn't exist. It's silly.
Are you saying maps are empirical data?
They are
cartography.
maps. No, maps are physical things which you observe, but you believe they're a map of a particular thing based on the testimony of someone telling
No,
you.
based upon the input data.
No, it's based on the testimony of someone telling you this is the map of this place.
Originally, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But since we developed satellite imagery,
That's fine. That's fine. But it proves my point anyway, which is that there are many routes.
Nothing
Just steamroll
proves
over him and
your
just
point.
yeah, exactly. Steamroll over him and just keep claiming that it proves my point. I mean, he's definitely the weakest of the ayah, and that's saying a lot because the rest of them aren't particularly strong to begin with. But he's by far the weakest of the whole lot of them. And it doesn't matter what you say. Yes, you've proved my point, as if this is supposed to be impressive. But again, remember who he's appealing to. He's not appealing to people like us that are more nuanced and critical. He's appealing to the gullible and the ignorant. And as long as he opens his mouth and he says something that even remotely sounds like it could be the case, and he's one of their guys, they're just going to accept it. And how do I know this? Because I hear from them all the time how wonderful these guys are. And when we go and expose the arguments here to be fallacious, poor, not good, whatever the case may be, we don't have any Muslims come on here to defend it. And in the comments, we don't have anybody actually saying, well, hey, you made a good argument, and here's why. I just never hear that from any of these gullible and ignorant Muslims who are in the comments trying to tell us that they know something. I never hear anything substantive, and that's why we're dealing with this. But he just steamrolled over the guy and says he's made my point. I mean, this is just laughable, really, because now anything will make his point. If you really say to him, well, what wouldn't make your point? What would I need to provide for you that you would concede that your point has not been made? Because at the moment, all you can see is that he's steamrolling over, so everything makes his point. He'll just talk over the guy, whatever the guy says, yeah, you're making my point. And the Muslims who are watching go, yes, he's made the point, as if they're being hypnotized by like a Darren Brown type guy, right? How do we know this? Because we hear it all the time, right? We see it in the comments all the time. So we have a lot of empirical data.
Can you see the chat on your phone?
Yes, I can. I'm looking at the chat now, yeah.
Abdul Hamid, where did we come from? I mean, what kind of a question is this?
Parents, obviously.
Where did mankind come from? Abdullah, that's where he's going. Okay, he's going. Okay, where did that come from? Where did we originate from? But
exploding stars. We star children.
What did you think? What do you think we came from? Do you think we came from Adam and Eve, handcrafted by your creator? Is that where we came from? So Adam and Eve, and then through incest? So that you need to believe that incest is the only way that people can come into existence. This is what you are now claiming. You are saying incest is the only way. Congratulations.
Knowledge.
well, no, because in the
Do you acknowledge that?
hold on a second. Because you use your straw man. Satellite imagery as
Sorry, madam, I know you've been waiting.
But I'm going to leave here blaming Muslims.
Can I get someone else to speak to you about that question? Muslim, Muslim, can you speak to this lady, please? She's got a question.
I've actually the last thing I'm going to say here.
But bro, do you acknowledge that there are other routes to knowledge?
No, sure. Prior to the existence of empirical data in the form of map making, through satellite imagery, through planes, through drones and stuff, yes, it was taking the opinion of someone else. However, now that we've been able to prove it with empirical data...
Hold on. Even today, let me give you a modern example, bro. Within the field of science, the empirical field, right? Most scientists base their current work, on the testimony of previous scientists. Do you acknowledge this? Do you understand?
No, I don't care what the guy says. I hope he says no. But that is not the case. It is not a matter how the Quran or how the Hadith or whatever were transmitted. You know, like through Chinese whispers, where one guy says to the next scientist, listen, what I found is this. No, we are looking at data. I went and I looked at some of the papers that people come with. If you're looking at developmental biology, I went and looked at the papers. I looked at the data to see if this really makes sense. I listened to the experts to see if it really made sense what they are saying, until I got a consistent message which made me then, after checking all these things, accept the theory of evolution on a very high level basis. I'm not an expert. I don't even profess to know all the details, but I understand the principle, and because I checked it, I go, and now I will go and accept it because I tested it. I checked it and it turned out to be consistent. I don't care what this guy is going to say, but that's the way that it works.
Hang on one sec as well. The other thing that science does that the Quran, for example, fails so utterly, miserably, so poorly on, is science makes predictions, testable predictions, and certain things incredibly precise predictions, like string theory, for example. I think it's 1 to, however many zeros, 9 zeros or something, one of the highest levels of predictions. Either it's string theory, I can't remember which one Krauss said, string theory or quantum mechanics, or both, maybe a combination of them. But other things, right? Things like, Einstein's general relativity. He made a prediction about the perihelion, in other words, the orbit of Mercury around the sun, and suggested this is what you should see if my theory is correct. And what do you know? About 4 years later, they went and observed it. Now do the same with the Quran. Give us an accurate prediction that can either confirm or falsify the Quran. If you don't have a falsification criteria, we're not going to take it seriously. And if you're going to give us vague and vacuous predictions, we're not going to take that seriously either. So science has a tremendous advantage. And if it turns out that it's falsified, then we move on.
This.
That's why it's called theoretical physics.
No,
it is.
Bro, you're not understanding what I'm saying. Call it whatever you want. What I'm saying is that it's based on the test.
Oh shit, no, I didn't understand. I interrupted. I will just go back.
Whatever you want.
I just need to go back to see the question again.
You're a scientist. Do you acknowledge this? Do you understand this?
That's why it's called theoretical physics.
He was saying, you did answer that. He's saying that that scientists use eyewitness testimony of other scientists. Well, it isn't just eyewitness testimony, it's also evidence. So when a scientist does an experiment, and let's say he finds a fossil or whatever the case is, that fossil, other scientists, his colleagues can come and test it, and they will come and do test as well. So it wouldn't just be somebody says something. Sure, everybody's communicating, if you're going to use that word as quote testimony, but a lot of it has empirical evidence backing it up. Now, your Quran doesn't, as an example, because I know this is what you want. You want somebody to say, hey, yes, I accept I accept testimony as a, quote, route to knowledge. And to some degree, like I say, with deductive arguments and so on, you can. But the scientific method doesn't just require or doesn't just have, quote, testimony, to use your term. It has the empirical evidence to back it up. And as Stopp said, if you took the time to understand and become an expert, it's very likely, to a high probability, that you would accept it if you actually went to look at the evidence itself. So if we could work out the perihelion of Mercury based on general relativity, we could predict that observation and we could observe it ourselves as well. So it's not just trusting other people.
Now, the reason why I went back was to wait for his answer, because I answered before he did, and I wanted to know what he says, and I didn't catch it. That's why I wanted to go back a bit.
Do you acknowledge this? Do you understand this?
That's why it's called theoretical physics.
No,
it is.
Bro, you're not understanding what I'm saying.
I don't understand his answer. Did you hear what he said?
He said something about theoretical. He said something about theoretical physics.
Because I couldn't understand his answer, and that's what I'm trying to. Okay.
Call it whatever you want. What I'm saying is that it's based on the testimony, the work of previous scientists. testimony is an integral route to knowledge you can't dismiss. That's what I'm saying to you. Because you came with the presupposition that empiricism is the only way to truth. It's not. Do you acknowledge that?
I never said it's the only way to.
Okay, so fine. We agree then on that point.
I think he did.
Yeah,
I
he
think
said,
he
look, if
actually
it wasn't
did.
empirical, it would have been irrational. So I think that was
Irrational,
just
exactly.
yeah, but I think that was just hopefully that was just a misstep in his, him speaking, right? He
That's
just
what I
misspoke
was saying in the
very lightly.
beginning. Exactly. This is what I was saying in the beginning. What I think he's saying is this and this. But he did sort of come out and say, well, if it's not this, then that. So,
Right? Now my point is then when it comes to God, why do you assume that there has to be only empirical? Why do you ask for empirical data when you acknowledge there's other routes to knowledge?
Stop there. Let's stop there. Because empirical data, firstly, it's claimed in the book itself, and empirical data is one of, if not the most reliable way to find out whether something is true or likely to be true. In other words, the probability is much higher with something that other people can verify as well. That's why most of us ask for empirical data. If you had a deist God, we probably wouldn't. But because you have a theist God and you make specific claims that these things happen, X, Y, and Z happen in this world, that's why we're asking for data, because that empirical data in principle can either be confirmed or falsified. That's why we're asking for it. And we do not accept, or I don't accept, I won't speak for other people, I don't accept eyewitness testimony. If somebody tells me they've spoken to God or seen Jesus or talked to, Gabriel or whatever, I am going to disbelieve. It's the default position for me is atheism, strong atheism. I'm not claiming it's impossible, but my position is 6.9 out of 7 on the Dawkins scale. I'm so far along the line that you would need to bring something extraordinary to accept it. I'm going to dismiss eyewitness testimony of extraordinary events off the bat immediately. That's me. Other people might not. I will.
and I want to just comment something in the chat, because Catch-22 thinks he's onto something. No. Why people say we is because atheists are not selfish people, because Muslims are taught to be selfish, all right? It's my points, it's my reward, it's my this. So Muslims are incredibly selfish. Scientists are not. What we do is we share information amongst each other, and we credit other people if we do and find something. So I will never say, I found this, but we as a team. So I see scientists as a team trying to establish what is happening in nature, and then going and presenting their findings so that people can learn from this, and we're just providing an explanation. That's all. So that is the we, because we don't go and say, all right, it's me, it's me, it's me. The way that somebody like idiot like Trump goes. He says, yeah, I'm the one who's bringing you the vaccine. No, he's not. It's a team of scientists who are doing that, and they will always say we. It's a form of sharing credit with others. This is the way that it works. It's got nothing to do with atheists. He doesn't understand it. Okay.
No, don't.
I tell you why not. Because God is not a part of the physical universe. He's distinct and disjoint from.
No, you can't do that. You can't just define this thing as being away from everything, that you can't detect it in any way. As soon as a supernatural entity goes and interferes with something here in the physical, natural world that we occupy, it will be able to detect it. Even if you say you cannot detect God, and you are the experts at detecting this and we are not, but as soon as there's any kind of interference, we will detect it, we will see it. Like the way that the Quran says, well, we place mountains on top of the earth to stop the shaking or something. Well, as soon as we look at that, we investigate, we find, no, that's wrong. Mountains are not plugged or pushed or something into the crust. It's the other way around. So the Quran is 180 degrees wrong, totally wrong. The opposite is happening. The same as flesh does not cover the bones. It's the opposite. It actually dies away so that you get digits. So it's the opposite when we look at reality. So whatever you're going to tell us about whatever is being said in the Quran about this God, as soon as we try and establish how this was interfering in our world, in nature, we find it's wrong. So you can't put it outside.
The other question is to turn it around on the Muslim and say, why do you accept eyewitness testimony for quote-unquote supernatural or extraordinary claims? Why do you do that? And why do you only do it for your particular ones and no other ones, especially when some of the other attested miracles or extraordinary claims were witnessed, or at least apparently witnessed, by hundreds more people than most of your claims ever have. Why don't you accept those? Now I want to hear the reason, number one, why they accept extraordinary claims from eyewitness testimony, and number two, why don't they accept all eyewitness extraordinary claims?
And why
wait
is
for
it
somebody
that is,
to answer that. If you're a Muslim, you type in the chat, why do you accept extraordinary eyewitness testimony for extraordinary claims, and why don't you accept all eyewitness testimony for extraordinary claims? What makes your eyewitness testimony superior to others? I'll wait.
why is it as soon as we ask you something to verify anything, you have to run away and hide? Never have I received an answer. Never.
From the physical universe, he created the physical, not a part of the physical. Therefore, you can't physically prove it. You cannot empirically prove or disprove God's existence. Simple.
Yeah,
so I can give you other.
I mean, we've just said it, right? This is the whole game they're playing. He's not the only one, right? They've all got together trying to sideline science, because if they can sideline science, then they can hold on to their beliefs. They feel like it's less likely they can be challenged. It's not going to work with, well, certainly not going to work for me, and I don't think it's going to work with you or most other people. You're not going to be able to sideline science. As Stops has said, and I've said repeatedly in this video alone, if you interfere in this world, if you make some sort of empirical claim, i.e. God doing something in this world, then science can be brought to bear.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially if it's a miracle or extraordinary claim, especially if it violates the laws of physics, then we can bring something to bear on this. And so you're not going to get away with this. I mean, you can try your best. I mean, it's just not going to work, right? And we're going to keep pointing this out to you. So you're not going to be able to sideline or sidestep science in your attempt to hold on to your beliefs.
Reasons now, because you're open now to the understanding there's other roots of knowledge. Would you like other reasons?
Right now, because I actually have to go.
You have to go? Okay, maybe when you're here next time we can have that discussion. Have you read the Quran?
I have not.
Okay, would you do me a favor? Read some of the Quran by next discussion.
Why doesn't somebody like him come on the gin and tonic? We've both read the Quran, we're reading it again, and we're going through the verses. Why doesn't he come on and defend the Quran? I'll tell you why, because people like us will be asking him the questions that he cannot answer. But random people in the street there, he'll have some sort of generic scripted answer. But as soon as he's put under pressure for the Quran, he will find that he won't be able to give anything substantive. I mean, he can ramble and babble, and you and I have had plenty of examples of this. But when people are put under pressure to defend this book that they say is complete, concise and error-free from their God, all we have to do is show them some of the verses that just blow that out of the water. They're going to hold on to it. We know they're going to be irrational or unreasonable at very best, but irrational at worst. But that's why people like him won't come and speak to people like us. They'll rather find the easy targets that they can just steamroll over.
Yeah, and then call us Islamophobe and haters and racist, yeah. But
any Muslim who's watching, go on.
No, I just want to say, if you believe what a Muslim tells you what the Quran says, it is most likely going to make you into a Muslim. But if you read the Quran yourself, you're definitely not. You're going to be a non-Muslim and atheist.
Well, you should if you're using critical thinking, right? But, if you're not and you are in a bad place, you're depressed, whatever, and you sort of have an inkling towards God, as we listen to somebody today, we won't necessarily mention who, Stops and I at different times watched somebody's quote-unquote conversion video, depressed, etc., already sort of believed in God and it kind of quote-unquote made sense to them. I wish I could zoom back in time or bring that person onto the show. And let's go through this Quran and see if it made sense. Did you actually read the entire Quran? How much of it did you actually understand? And how did you make sense of X, Y, and Z? We'll point out examples in the Quran that you will not be able to make sense out of. At best, you'll have to make some vacuous claim or appeal to the scholars or whatever the case is. At that point, all we have to do is rewind you back to the time you became a convert and say, hey, why didn't you stop and ask the scholars then? Why did you accept this uncritically at that stage? And that's my universal claim for every Muslim on the planet. There's no exception that I've found so far. Every Muslim doesn't use critical thinking at the highest level. And of course, Imran is a great example. And so are the Muslims in the chat here, by the way. Again, misunderstanding. I mean, I don't take Catch-22 particularly seriously. Obviously, he can't understand basic terms, telling me that a belief is now an empirical claim. If I say I believe that God split the moon, is that an empirical claim? Well, of course it is. It's an extraordinary empirical claim, but it's an empirical claim. We can test whether the moon was split or not split. So please, I mean, maybe you are past your bedtime. I don't know. Maybe you just aren't understanding me. Maybe I'm speaking too fast or in a different accent. But I could speak to you as if I was speaking to a child if you need to. Just ask the question and I'll explain it as if I was explaining to a child.
And my new favorite is chapter 7, sentence 152. It starts, these are the people that, and it stops in the middle of the sentence, and you got to find your own ending to the sentence because they forgot what the ending was. It's missing. And people, Muslims tell me they understand the Quran. There are sentences that don't even end. This is so funny. Oh, goodness.
Read the 112th chapter, if anything, just the 112th chapter.
Next time.
And then we'll discuss it. But at least can we conclude on this point so we can carry on the discussion? You agree there's other routes to knowledge other than empiricism, yeah? And that we as human beings are rational enough to have a discussion. And you still,
that we're capable of being
I want an answer from you next time as to how you account for rational faculties on your worldview.
I can't.
Maybe next time, when you come back next time, you can come with something, yeah? Thank you.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so that was a short one. We thought we'd do a short one. I mean, if anybody's got a particular video, I mean, we've been going 50 minutes for a 6-minute video. Obviously, we've been answering people in the text and so on as well. But if there's a video you want to do, I've got a couple more in the pipeline. We could always do another one, but it will probably go quite late here. But if you're a Muslim and you want to jump on and have a chat, then by all means do that. Just notice that last question, right? And this is the sort of precept type argument that he's going to attempt to go for, right? He doesn't really understand it because I've heard him attempt to give it before. Account for your rational faculties. So what does it mean to account? It means to say, hey, this is why I believe I have rational faculties. And all you need to do for an account is say, hey, I presuppose it from a philosophical point of view and from a atheist naturalist point of view that it has come about through a natural process. Whether I can pinpoint that process or not is not that important to me, and I've got trust that at some point that will happen. And even if it doesn't, that still doesn't mean that you can insert the God claim and say, hey, he gave me my rational faculties. That's like a just so story that it doesn't explain anything. And you can say that about anything. God of the gaps comes to mind there. So my account is that I'm presupposing. That's obviously not good enough for some people, but he's doing the same, of course. In order to understand God, read the Quran, or have any rational idea of the world around you, you have to presuppose it. You can't prove it, otherwise it's circular. You're using your rational faculties in an attempt to prove it, which would be a circular argument. So those much smarter than me have realized this thousands of years ago, and has been tweaked and updated since then. And one way is called foundationalism. That's one of the philosophical terms. And you have a foundation, a starting point, beyond which you can't justify it. Otherwise, it would be circular. But those starting points are particular ones, and there's certain reasons why you have certain starting points and not others. But to try and justify it as in like why I have this would be circular. But then you ask him, well, how do you have it? Now you'll get this just so story. Well, God, this amazing being, he sort of gave us this. Well, demonstrate that A, your God exists, and B, that he's given it to you. And then you've got something. But otherwise, it's God of the gaps, because anything we don't know, you can just say God did it. And that's not impressive, it's not informative, and it's not interesting to anybody who's thinking about these things clearly.
I'm just going with the chat now. It's quite amazing how people, like this Muslim guy who doesn't understand belief, he doesn't understand that I can be, I don't know, certain of something, anything, and I can believe it. And I can do so without evidence, without anything. It can be on a whim, it can be emotion, it can be anything, it doesn't matter. I can be convinced, or I can believe that I was abducted by aliens last night and they conducted some sex experiments on me, and I can believe that. But as soon as I go to you and say, you know what, I was abducted by aliens. And now you say to me, nah, come on. Boof. I've made a claim. And now somebody can question me on that. That is the difference. I can be convinced of anything and I can believe it. As soon as I go out and talk to people about it, it changes, because then obviously I'm making a statement, and by making a statement I'm saying, there you go, this is what happened. And then you can be questioned.
Why don't these Muslims come and join us? There's the Discord link. We can pop onto Discord and have a chat with them. Why don't you come on there and you can have a conversation? If you're too concerned about coming on here, or you're a bit nervous about coming on here, I understand that, because we won't even ask you to defend Islam. what we
Here's the
will ask you,
link. Come and join us. Here's the link.
because I
Come and
understand
join
trying
us
to,
now. No problem. Come and just give us your reasoning, give us your argument, just whatever. Just tell us something. But what you're doing now in the chat is making like really stupid statements there. And no one is saying we need God. We met God. But the question is, do you need a God? Why do you need a God to get you through the day? I don't understand that.
well, they'll claim objective morals, right? And then we'll critique
Well,
that, and we'll find
that's
we'll
totally
find
wrong.
that that's hugely problematic. You won't really
We've
get to.
already well, we've already established that they need incest to get mankind going. So they believe strongly, and they must. They cannot condemn incest. They can't. I can. They can't.
Yeah, unless they do special pleading. Oh, well, that's the way God wanted it to be. And anybody who makes the claim, I mean, these guys wouldn't know how to make that claim, but I've heard a couple of Muslims make the claim. This is, I think it was Imran, actually, who said this is the best possible world. What do you mean by best in this case? An unfalsifiable claim? All I will have to do is ask you, what's your criteria for best? In other words, something that we can imagine, we can't imagine it being better. Obviously we can, right? So once we pin somebody down on this, then it's trivially easy to show that this is like nowhere near the best possible world. It's not the worst, but it's certainly, if I had to grade it myself, it would probably be less than 50%. It's nowhere near, the sort of world that one would expect, or quote, the best possible world. But again, that claim is an unfalsifiable one. So if I asked him what the criteria was, for example, he wouldn't be able to give me anything that's falsifiable, because immediately I can, within 10 seconds, think of something to show that that claim is false. But that's typically what they will do. How can you have objective morality? A, it's not objective, and B, well, you can't demonstrate it's objective. But even if you could demonstrate that it was objective, what you then have to do is demonstrate that it's objectively good. So you have two criteria you've got to meet, and nobody's ever been able to do that in any satisfactory way. In fact, I was listening to a philosophical podcast with some people talking about this at a higher level, and talking about what the philosophers like Craig and other people have done to try and overcome this, and why those don't work either. But the lay people and the Ayera and Muslim apologists who are nowhere near that level, they won't even get to that level. But even that level fails. So, at the bottom level, you don't have it. So people like Catch-22 talking about subjectivity and trying to pat themselves on the back because they think that they've got an objective morality. Well, let me have a discussion with you, and I'll quickly show you why that's a dead end for you. I mean, I don't expect you to actually take it on or think about it seriously. You'll keep repeating what you normally do, because you're one of those Muslims who will just keep repeating what you've heard, because you've taught what to think, not how to think, which is very unfortunate. What Stops and I want to do is help people to start thinking how, not what. That's the difference.
One question I have: if God created everything, didn't He create nothing?
Well, in my view, there's no such thing. I mean, you can ask the Muslims, right? But in my view,
that's what I'm doing.
In my view, I think the Muslim claim that nothing is, that God created something from nothing is not just unreasonable or irrational. It's impossible, given that what they understand about
They
God.
are saying He said be, and He was from out of nothing. But
Yeah,
the
that's
thing is,
impossible.
but the Muslim has to claim that. The Muslim has to believe something can come from nothing. Also, if we take the universe, was there something with Allah before He created anything? Well, if not, then what material was used to create the universe? It must have been part of Allah. So I am part of Allah. Thank you very much. You can call me sir.
Yeah. I mean, I've run this argument and hasn't, Muslims haven't given, they don't really understand it. And it's something that you said, right, Stops, and I've kind of remembered that, right? At least most of the Muslims I've ever spoken to, there might be the odd one that isn't, but my anecdotal experience strongly suggests that they can't conceptualize things. And that's why I use the fish bowl, the water bowl with a fish, to try and, help them think about it, because they don't conceptualize. They read words on a page and they just sort of accept it without looking or for the brain to try and conceptualize something. So when I make the claim that it's impossible in their worldview for God to create something from nothing, they just can't even grasp that concept. And so I'm trying to make the analogy to help their brains think about the concept. And even then, when I do it, and you can see, like a child will be able to follow along, go, oh, hang on a moment, there's a problem here. right? At that point, then there's like a short circuit. I've tried this with a number of people. Even hijab, you can go look on my channel. It becomes a short circuit, and off we go on tangents and sophistry and tactics to avoid following the logical pathway. And that's the problem, right? And you can see it with many of these people. They can't follow logical pathways. Even the claim with Hamza, right, about this whole thing with belief. Hey, I'm not putting my belief on you, and I've explained it like I would to a child, and he still doesn't get it. Even Yusuf Ponders, the other guy, understood it and explained it to him, and I agreed with him on the channel, right? So, and this is basic stuff, right? And I laid it out like I would to somebody in a primary school, and it still doesn't get. And he's not unique. Many of them are like him, right? And it takes somebody like Yusuf Ponsers, which again, we'd have to question, to understand a little bit more on the topic and to recognize that, of course, there is an inference that if you believe something, you want other people to believe it too, if they're rational, if you've got good reasons, and those people should be convinced by good reasons. It's just basic logic. 1, 2, 3. It's a deductive argument. You can't get out of that unless you're going to show a premise is invalid or unsound, which I don't believe you can.
Well, I put the link out there, and we can see how Catch-22 and Abdul Hamid are joining us to go and convince us of the existence of their God, obviously. Well, Abdul Hamid quickly ran away and said, well, I can't do this. I don't speak English. He only wants to do this in Dutch. So Abdul Hamid doesn't want to. And Catch-22, are you man, woman, or person enough to come and join us and tell us personally what things are and what happened and how life started, how the universe started? No?
Better yet, go and get one of the guys that you think are so good at doing this, and they can come on here. Stops and I have been on the other channels. Why is it that these Muslims appear to be very nervous of coming on either this channel or the Gin and Tonic? And this is your supposed lion of Speaker's Corner, who in actual fact, for the rest of us, can see as a kitten that barely meows. You guys think are roaring. I think for you guys, it's like you need to look in the mirror or something. You need to, whatever you're taking, you need to, it's not working for you.
I did this in a video with Hamza where I actually had this picture where I said, like, because he has this lion on his avatar thing or his background or something. So I put a pussycat and took the mirror, and in the mirror you see a lion. This is how he thinks of himself. Like, he's a little pussycat, and when he looks at himself, he thinks he's a lion.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to save brain cells, Catch-22, stop reading the Quran, start to think for yourself. I appreciate that would be a challenge for you, but it's like anything. If you go to the gym the first time, your muscles feel out of whack, and you've got to start going to build a muscle. It's the same thing. You need to start thinking critically. Come and listen to us on the Gin and Tonic show, and stop just believing things because you've been told what to believe instead of how to believe. I understand it might be an uncomfortable, painful process, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, but look how quickly they come up with excuses. They're big
Of
mouths.
course, I mean.
When they're in the chat, they have these huge, big mouths, and they say, "Yeah, we will destroy you." He wrote, I swear I will destroy you. Okay, now you're given the opportunity to destroy us, and nothing.
Anytime you want to do it. If we're wrong and you can show logical fallacy, I'm prepared to rethink it. But you can do it on Discord server. We have a Discord server that's not recorded. Then you don't have to feel nervous about it. And you can come in, you can bring a friend as well. Or you can ask the audience. Or you can do 50-50, whatever. We can play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as well. So it's all good, and we all have beliefs. Yeah, and the problem is with beliefs is why you've got to be convinced for good reasons, and you need to demonstrate it, and that's your obligation to yourself, if nobody else. Yes, everybody has beliefs. That's a trivially true statement, just like everybody breathes air. It's completely uninformative and uninteresting. The question is, have you got beliefs for which you have good reasons? And if you don't, or if you haven't thought about it, you should rethink it.
As an atheist, you need more belief than a theist.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a vacuous statement, isn't it?
What do I believe? I don't believe. This is the whole point. What you guys are doing, and this is another misconception, that we believe in evolution, we believe in abiogenesis, we believe in all these things. No, we don't. As an atheist, I only don't believe. I have no good reason to believe gods or goddesses exist, so I don't. That's it. And I do not believe in evolution. If evolution is wrong, well, so what? It doesn't matter. It's not going to change my belief regarding gods. I'm not going to say, oh yes, Dawkins was wrong. Now I have to believe in a god, and because there are so many gods, which one do I choose? Let me take Allah. No, it doesn't work like that. You're an idiot if you really think this.
But there are claims, right? So if there was a way to establish that Adam and Eve came into existence without a common ancestor, then that would disprove evolution, and that would require some sort of, very different explanation that we've ever had. So if Adam and Eve, if there were such two people, and we could verify that they didn't have a common ancestor, that would certainly throw evolution, common ancestry, which is the main one. Doesn't matter what the mechanism was, that would throw it out, right? And if you could somehow demonstrate there was your particular God, which is even more of a challenge, or not some other way, like with Prometheus, for example, then you'd be onto something. But this is like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops, as somebody said to me, and I like that analogy. You're not even at base camp. You're looking up there. You haven't got to the first base camp. You're looking at the top there, and you think you can climb Mount Everest with flip-flops and no oxygen or backpack or anything. And yeah, good luck.
Well,
Nobody's ever done it.
Thinking clearly, if God is something, what it is, it exists. Well, everything that exists is made from water. So God is made from water.
Yeah, but the claim that God created the universe being it is out of nothing is obviously a vacuous claim. And again, I could go into it, but I'd need to have a Muslim here. What happened to Smart Cat? Did you see him?
Well, I said to him, here we are, join us whenever you want to. He said, well, when is this going to be? I said, well, in 20 minutes or so. Oh, okay. And that's it. But he's not joining.
Yeah, it's just difficult and obviously people who are in the text don't want to come on. Either they can't speak, they don't feel like they can speak English properly, or they're cautious that we might try and trick them. That's not the point. What we do want, though, is for them to think critically, and that's the main point. Is not to make a fool of you or claim that you're slapped and tickled, as somebody the other night said, but it is for you to think about things. Because in our experience, it's mostly what to think and not how to think. And if you've been brought up that way, then the circuitry for the brain is programmed in a particular way to accept something that you already believe, that confirms your belief, and deny anything that would, disconfirm your belief without actually checking anything. And so, I want to know from Theus, and if you're listening, put it into the chat. Why is it that you believe eyewitness testimony for certain, and it happens to be your particular supernatural or extraordinary claims, and you don't accept it for anybody else? Why do you accept eyewitness testimony for extraordinary or supernatural claims?
And if you want to know how did it begin, if I do not know, what does that mean for you? If I do not know something, why are you coming to me to verify the existence of your God? If I have an answer how it began, will you accept that there is no God? If I do not know, does that mean your God exists just because I don't know something? Are you totally mad? Don't you understand how these questions show that you are completely, utterly crazy? You don't think about these things. Why do you ask me, how did it all begin? So
Well, that's begging the question anyway, right? Because who says that it had to begin?
Well, there's a lot of things wrong with it, but the logical sort of inference here is that what you're saying, if I don't know what this God did or where it started or how it started, this means God exists. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing there. You're crazy to think this, because all you're doing is you're asking me to verify your God. And that doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, but you don't know. I mean, that's the problem. You don't know. You claim to know, and when you're put under pressure to explain how you claim to know, then it all falls apart. And by the way, the people that are supposedly better than you have tried to do this, and it just falls apart when they're put under pressure.
He says, we ask you because you are part of the we club. And he's saying, we ask you because...
What, you mean the rational people, the critical thinkers, those people that accept evidence, etc., you mean? And the what's the word? The consensus of the scientific community with regards to universal origins is they're undecided. There's some people that think there was some sort of beginning, and by the way, all of those people that are not, theists don't think God had the beginning. So that's interesting. They have their various theories based on theoretical physics and some level of observations like the cosmic microwave background, etc. And there's many cosmologists who think that the universe is past eternal. So
I'm
it's
making
undecided.
fun of, I'm showing the irony here that he is saying he's making fun of me using we, but he is using we. This is the irony, that he doesn't even see that he is making the same or doing the same thing what I'm doing, is if he's taking a bigger group, then in the language we use we. And he's doing the same thing and saying, well, we are saying this because you are part of we. And it's, God, he's so stupid.
But I think Abdul Hamid is shooting himself in the foot. He says, thinking clearly, he, meaning God, is beyond you or me, can't comprehend God. Okay, so why do you believe something you can't comprehend? That is
Exactly.
irrational. That's just shooting yourself in both
You're
feet.
killing yourself.
You're now in quicksand that you can't get out of. If you are believing something you can't comprehend, that is irrational. You should at the very least be undecided, or you should disbelieve, especially if it's a supernatural claim. Instead, you claim to believe something you can't comprehend. That to me is a definition of being irrational.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, I think on that note, hopefully that short video was entertaining and educational, but hopefully now you're aware if you ever get a Muslim come and ask you about your parents because you're asking for evidence, wanting to claim that your because you believe things on, quote, eyewitness testimony, you should accept their eyewitness testimony for extraordinary claims. You can now point out that that's a false equivalence. It's an equivocation fallacy. And you can say, well, hang on a moment, there are parents, whether I know who these ones are with certainty, there's reliable methods to ascertain that. Now show me those same reliable methods for your God. And at that point, what can they do? They can appeal to the Quran.
Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Random or intended. This is the dichotomy that he sort of creates. This is why we're making the videos, to show people, listen, you need to think. Don't immediately jump at this. If somebody says, okay, you have two options, don't accept it. First start thinking about it, because this is ludicrous. And yet a lot of Muslims will do this to try and trick you. Don't do that. There's millions of other options. So don't do it. All right, guys, then. Thank you very much. See you whenever.
Yeah, I might pop onto Discord. So if anybody wants to come over to Discord, you can see the link that's scrolling there in the at the bottom of the screen. So if you want to pop on there, especially if you're Muslim and you want to come and chat to Stops and I offline, then you're more than welcome.
No, I can't.
Okay.
I'm starting to cough. I don't know what's
Oh, dear.
I've got
Okay.
COVID
But
now.
we'll be back with another video when we find one that's of interest. I've got a few in the pipeline, and Stops and I have got time. So thank you for your time. Take care, look after yourselves, and good night for tonight.
Nighty.